It's our time. It's our time.
Hey there, I'm Shub from North of Normal, and welcome to One Song, One Story. The concept is simple. Each guest brings a song that means something real to them, and we talk about the story behind it, what it meant then and what it means now. However, today's a little different. I'm joined by Jim Farfaglia, an author and storyteller who has spent years collecting the musical memories of more than 350 people. His book is called One Song, One Story. Sound familiar? This episode is a bonus conversation where we dive into his world, his creative journey, and everything he's learned from listening to so many people share the song that shaped them. I'm super excited for this one, so settle in and let's see where this conversation takes us. Enjoy. Welcome to the One Song, One Story podcast, Jim Farfaglia. How are you, sir?
Doing really good, Shub. It's good to have this talk with you.
Good. Likewise, very excited about this. And in the intro, apologies, we've just talked about this. I pronounced your name Farfaglia. I have since learned it sounds much cooler and it's Farfaglia. And where is that name from?
Well, it's an Italian name. Both of my mom and dad's parents immigrated from Italy, and so that's where it originates. Loose translation of Farfaglia is butterfly.
Wow.
Which has always been a sort of a totem insect for me, the crystallization, the transformation, caterpillar to butterfly. So that's pretty cool.
Very cool. And whereabouts in the world are you today, Jim?
So I'm in my hometown of Fulton, New York, which is, I call it northern New York State. Some people call it central New York, but just 10 miles from Great Lake, Ontario, if you know the Great Lakes in the States. So we get lots of snow here, and that's where I'm from. That's where I am today.
Fantastic. And how is your day going so far?
Great. Sundays are, kind of a relaxed day. Did some little cooking and eating. I get a couple extra naps in. I'm a big napper because I get up pretty early, and so when I can squeeze a nap in, that's a good day.
Man, I dream of naps. I've got 2 young kids, so...
Yeah, that won't happen for a while for you, probably.
Now, for those listening, Jim is going to do an episode, the more traditional format where you bring a song on here that's somehow become a part of your life. But this is a bonus episode, and I should set the scene as to how we met. So I came up with the concept of One Song, One Story, and everything moved pretty quick. I think within a week, I was sending out invites. I was really excited. Never once actually accidentally Googled it a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh, interesting. There was a few different kind of names, like One Story, One Song. And I scrolled down a little further and I saw One Song, One Story, which was your website. And I clicked on the website and I was like, no way. And I read about what you were doing, and it's a similar project. So I just had this urge to reach out to you. So I sent you an email. I think you were on holiday at the time, just saying, Jim, listen, we've got an idea with the same name. I'd love to connect. And I'm curious to know how it felt when you got that email.
Yeah. Great way to start. It was an amazing feeling because, somehow that same phrase came to me, and I've been living with it for a couple of years now in my project. And then to have someone have the exact same and the similar, it was pretty amazing. It felt really good. Super excited to talk with you. So thanks so much for reaching out.
Pleasure. And I honestly appreciated the energy that came back so much, because part of me thought, like, is this guy going to be like, wait, what are you doing? That's my idea.
No.
And as someone who started so much earlier, and you came back like, this is amazing. And I was like, oh, great. We definitely need to speak now.
Yeah, no, I just, it's sort of like rivers and mountains. And I mean, who owns those? People say that's my mountain, we share it. And the fact that we have really similar goals in mind for this work is just super exciting to me, to meet another human being that cares about music in a way that wants to connect with people through it.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that our listeners will be really excited by your episode where you bring a song, but I think they'll be really curious to understand your journey as well. So we will get into the project and, how it started and how it's evolved for you, because it's something you've been working on for quite a few years now. For those who don't know you, I would love to kind of understand your background. I know when we briefly spoke, you're an author, but you're a teacher. Would love you to set the scene as to kind of how Jim arrived at this point. The big question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I arrived because I've been waiting my whole life to be here. I remember as a teenager, getting in a little trouble in my home, and I won't go into detail,
Mm,
but I remember my mom and dad saying, well, what is it you want to do? I just was sort of rudderless. I couldn't find a way. And the only word that came out of my mouth was music. And
yeah.
and then I think they assumed that meant I wanted to play a musical instrument in the school band, which I did try to do, but it was something different than that. But music has been a part of my life for, as long ago as I can remember, at least as a conscious young adult or teenager. So, but it was always sort of a side thing for me, or a hobby or whatever. And so I, followed a traditional route, if you will, going to college, got a teaching degree, taught school for 7 years, enjoyed it, but realized it wasn't quite a good fit for me. So I shifted to outdoor education, recreation, which to me there's a lot of teaching moments in that field too. And so most of my adult career was in outdoor education, running a summer camp, doing youth leadership training, that sort of thing. Um, and then, just as a fluke, and I met a person who was very important to me in my life, and she kind of pulled out the poet in me, if you will, and which I had no idea that I could write, or thought,
Wow.
or yeah. And so that unleashed this sort of the writing process. Um, and then toward the end of my career in Parks and Recreation, I had the opportunity to put together a little book of the history of the camp that I ran, and I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved the art of writing, and so that's where then things started generating towards me being a writer. And then when I retired, gosh, almost 15 years ago, I just I didn't really retire. I just went into this new career as a writer, and it's just been incredible. Best
Yeah.
decision I ever made.
Retirement, you meant to like rest, aren't you? It sounds like sounds like you got busier.
Well, I don't know how many of your listeners are either retired or near retirement age, but you have to be really careful because your life fills up. I'm sure people have heard, I'm busier now than when I worked or whatever, but it's true. There's so many opportunities, and, you're at a stage of life where life is precious. I mean, it should be precious every minute, of course, but, as you get older, you really want to just take it all in. So I dove in pretty strong as a writer right away.
That's amazing. And so passionate about music. I love the way you say that this influence of yours brought out your inner poet and a writer. Do you ever think about where that creative streak came from in you?
As a writer, where the writing thing came?
Yeah.
Well, I did. I have this terrible story about my next door neighbor who was a couple years younger than me, excuse me, him to listen to some short story I wrote, and sitting on our porch, and, was really bad writing, and, but making him listen to me. I think I always wanted to write, but if I could just tell you a quick story about
Mm,
the type of writing I do, and an early memory of that, because I think that's really what kind of clicked with me. So I write a lot of local history. This music book is actually a real transition for me. But in local history, I interview a lot of people who live the topic I'm writing about, whether it be farming or, working in a chocolate factory, things, other books I've written. So I interview a lot of people, and then I take those pieces of interview and I weave them into what I consider a good story. And it reminded me of something when I was young, about 8 or 9 years old. We used to get a Sunday newspaper, and it had a supplement in there that was like It had all the TV listings, sort of like a TV guide, if you know what a TV guide used to be. They're not popular anymore, but it was just, here interspersed through the whole paper would be, Monday afternoon, then the next page, Tuesday morning. And so I got this great idea that I was going to cut out all those pieces and put it together into a book like a real TV guide. And my mother was furious at me because nobody else had read the paper yet. But it clicked on me that I have a sense of how to put things in order
Mm.
so that they're more understandable. And so, as we get into talking more about this music book, that's part of the tool I use to write, is this way of assimilating different people's thoughts and feelings and then immersing them together in a book form.
Yeah. It's amazing. So this is, there's like a nice theme running through there. And I find it quite interesting because I probably said at the start, I'm probably quite an impulsive thinker. Like something comes to me and I get it out and then I move on. Same with writing songs, but the process you're describing is very well thought out, crafted, a lot of data collection, a lot of arranging. And that's very interesting that you probably see something at the start and then work through a very long process and then let it take shape. And at the end, you have a beautiful story to tell at the end of it.
Yeah.
Always fascinated at the different processes that occur in people's minds.
Well, if I can just comment, I respect your type of creativity so much because I don't have that. And that was always frustrating for me. And so you're like the creative spark. You are an example of a creative spark. My creativity is taking those sparks and somehow making my own art,
Mhm.
which, comes together as a book. Both are good, both are necessary, but I've
Yes.
always admired, I've admired singer-songwriters my whole life. So praise to you as well.
Right back at you. And you mentioned the phrase, the spark there. So it's probably a nice time to get onto the spark behind this project, but it might help for you to set the scene a little bit more than what I've done. So please tell us about the book that you're working on at the moment.
Sure, sure. So I think I mentioned that most of my published books have been about local history, which I've enjoyed immensely. But all my life, even before I became a legitimate writer, if you will, I've wanted to somehow capture what music means to me. And I've tried it in every way I could think of. I've written poetry. I published a book of poems about what music's meant to me. I had a blog for years about, very similar to One Song, One Story, where I would take a song and kind of tell us my story through that song. I actually tried to write a fiction. I've never written fiction before. I tried to take a fictional character pretty much based on my childhood about a boy that wants to play piano. And I tried that way. And I never got to the essence. And I may never, ever, who knows? I mean, I'm still in the middle of this project, but this feels a lot closer. So,
Yeah.
uh, I, I, I thought, well, why not marry what I'm good at, which is interviewing people or pulling information from people, and then my love of music together. And if I could just take a second to explain the initial idea that I
Yes.
had, if that's okay to go there.
Please do.
Um, because I was reading a book and I wrote down the name of it so I don't mispronounce or misstate the title of the book. It's called Our Hidden Conversations: What Americans Really Think About Race and Identity. And it's written by a woman named Michelle Norris. Some of your listeners may know Michelle was she's on the NPR, All Things Considered. She was a host for that, and she's written for the Washington Post. But she put together this book about racial issues in our country, and she developed something called the race card. And what she asked, she gave them postcards, and she said, write down in 6 words what race means to you, or what you think of when you think of the word race. And that was it. It was that simple, right? And then she worked several years on this. I collected thousands of these postcards and then wrote a book based on these postcards. So the book, it's a great read, and I recommend it. But all of a sudden in my mind, I'm thinking, postcard, music, keep it simple, because I think one of the things I've tried to do when I've interviewed people about music, and maybe you find this in your work, is you ask them generally about music and it's just too big, it's too broad, too overwhelming, too amazing. So I thought, okay, let's bring it down to postcard size and let's think of one song and tell me one story about that song. And so I developed a postcard project based on what Michelle had done with her work. And that was how it started. And I've got lots more to say about how it worked out, but that's sort of the where it started.
Fantastic. And how long was this ago?
Well, I got the idea probably 3 years ago. And then I took some time to develop the project before I sent out my first postcard. And I do pretty much do my own work. I have hired like a graphic artist before to do book covers and stuff, but I try to do my own work, the tools that are needed for my project. So I worked at that slowly.
Very cool. And how did the name come to you?
You know, I think in a previous conversation I shared with you I read this book about, somebody interviewed all these songwriters. Where did you get your inspiration for this amazing song you wrote? And 3/4 of them are like, I don't know where it came from. It just showed up one day. And that one song, one story. I do practice yoga. I start my mornings with yoga, and a lot of times it'll just show up.
Mm.
And I wished I'd been paid more attention, Shub, when it happened, because I don't remember the exact moment, but I think it just came to me. I mean, simple, right? I just want you to think of one song, and then I want you to tell me one story. One song, one story.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
How about you? Is it fair to ask you where it came from for you?
I have no idea. Similar-ish. Everything was happening quite fast. And like you said, it just seemed like this obvious title jumped out, and it was nice and simple. It explained hopefully explained exactly what the concept was. And I just moved on very quick. I didn't really give much thought. And then it just, I've never gone back and questioned it. Some things just feel like they happen naturally and you just keep going with the flow. So it just stuck. Yeah. And after a few days, I'd already put so much energy into it. I was like, oh, it's too late to change it now anyway.
Yeah. Who
That's great.
designed your logo with the, I call it a star above? Did you do that, or?
Yeah, did it all myself because it's North of Normal is mine and my brother's music production company, and it has a very similar sort of logo. It's black with a star. So I just created something similar, something on brand. Again, it felt like something that needed simplicity and clarity as opposed to overcomplicating or overthinking. So that happened very quickly as well. And haven't gone back and looked at that either.
It's very.
Thank you. And so you had this idea, and I guess the idea initially, like you said, was inspired by this postcard sized question. Did you have any, when did you give thought to how you were actually going to go about reaching out to people? How many people you were going to reach out to? How did that all unfold?
Okay. Well, because I've written for the last 15 years, I have a little bit of a local following, email list and Facebook page. So that part was pretty easy. People are always curious, what's your next project, Jim? What are you doing? And so reaching out to those who already knew me was pretty easy. And so, but I knew I wanted more than that. And this is the transition for me as a writer. I was coming out of that local history mindset, and I wanted to go global. I really did. And by the way, I do have 3 submissions from England.
Fantastic.
So I wanted to just reach lots of people that I wouldn't normally reach. So for that, I did hire someone. I have a woman who designed my website and has done promotion for me before, and I just hired her as a what's the right word? I don't even know how I would describe, just a brainstormer, someone to help me think, what are ways that I could get this word out that I myself am not thinking. And she was wonderful. She came up with pages of just ideas, and then I could pull from those to reach out. And there are other things, local coffee shop in town that services a pretty different clientele from my normal readers, if you will. She let me put up a poster there, and I went on a local. Our biggest city near here is Syracuse, New York, and I went on a TV show there and talked about it. So that kind of reached it out, and then word of mouth. I mean, people love the idea. That's the good
Yeah.
thing. I don't know if you're finding the same thing. It's like, wow, what a great idea this is. But then, the hard part of actually narrowing it down, that was a challenge for a lot of people. But getting the concept out was fairly easy.
I mean, I've certainly found the same. I think the first initial feedback is, how am I going to choose one song? But also the initial feedback, or the initial feeling that I get, is that there is something within people who are super excited to have the opportunity to talk about a song that means so much to them, because we don't really do that. I think maybe with people that you talk a lot about music with, you talk about some songs while they're playing, but the opportunity to really, really sit down and really think about it and then speak your thoughts out aloud about the connection you have with a song is something you don't get a chance to do much. And I think, again, when we talked in the build up, I think a lot of the reason that I started this was probably a realization that the older I get, the quieter I get, and the less I'm interested in small talk. But the thing that still lights me up, and I could spend hours talking about, is music, is about the music I like and why I like it and what it means to me in so much detail. And I guess there was a curiosity there. There's both a selfish desire to, like, I want to have more conversations. I want to connect with more people about music, but also a curiosity in like, I wonder if other people get as excited about this as well. And so far, in my experience, and certainly it sounds in your experience, that people are genuinely open and excited to share their experience of music via one song.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, so much you said there that I want to respond to. I originally set a goal for 1,000. I wanted to get 1,000 entries. I'm at 350 now, and I'm starting to write the book. And it's not like I gave up on the 1,000. And by the way, for your listeners to know, I'm still accepting submissions. We can talk about that at the end. Um, but why did I start with only 350? Because that 350, I don't know how I'm going to fit all those stories in one book. So 1,000 might have been too grand, but I think everybody, when they take the time to think about it, has a song
Mm.
for whatever reason. And isn't that amazing? It almost feels like one of the pillars of life to me. Like, we're all musical in one way or another. Maybe we don't create music, but we appreciate it. We love it. We hum, we sing, we whistle. It's such an organic part of who we are that I think anybody who would take the time to think about it, there will be a song there for them. And that's pretty amazing to me.
That is amazing. And I was excited about the fact you said you wanted to take it global, because instantly I started thinking about the different cultural aspects of that, in the roles music will play in different countries and cultures, and how that would kind of weave into the whole overall experience of all the feedback that you're getting, which would be a fascinating kind of additional lens to add in. Probably a lot more to think about for you and a lot more work, but a lot more interesting all the same.
Yeah. They say when it's interesting, or when you're inspired, it's not work.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like work. I sit down at my desk every day. I write. I'm a daily writer. Some people don't do that, but I write every day, and it's a joy. It's never a chore. So one of the things that, so I don't call myself a true historian. A lot of people think of me as historian because I write about local history, but again, it's through the lens of people's memories. But one of the things I do when I'm inspired is I do research, and I did a little research on how far back music goes in our species as human beings.
Oh, wow.
And some people believe it preceded language, that there was music before there were maybe we made sounds and we communicated sort of roughly, but so I weave that in my introduction to the book. I've woven that in a little bit of how far back and how immersed in our species music is. Pretty amazing.
It is amazing, and I've done a little bit of digging into that myself, just out of curiosity. And there's some beautiful things that comes up, like you said, a form of communication or just mimicking your natural environment, which seems quite sort of innate for a lot of humans to mimic and replicate sounds around them. And a beautiful one I came across was a theory that we had learned to mimic the sounds of nature to soothe babies and mimic the sounds of night and calm. And I was like, wow, now that is beautiful as well.
Yeah. Oh,
But yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I think when you look at when, as far as we look back or as far as we understand, when you see the sort of the first understanding of when humans created musical instruments and things like that. But that is probably so far down the line. I mean, we were probably tapping on rocks and tapping our feet way before that ever happened. But there does seem a kind of an innate desire in humanity to make sounds for whatever reason. And I guess it's still playing out now in just much more developed forms of music. There's something in us that wants to express, communicate through something that can't really be conveyed by words.
they say that, as our species has developed, we drop things that aren't essential or that we don't need or that sort of thing. And we've never dropped music.
Mm.
Music could have gone to the wayside if it wasn't really as important and essential to us as it is. I could venture to think it would never. How could we not have music in our life, right? Just imagine that life without music.
Yeah, that would be tough. That would be tough to imagine. Would love to explore a little bit more. And you touched on a few bits there about, behind the scenes of making this book. So you have a network, you've set up this website, and all this information comes in. And just to touch on something you said there, typically I will drop links in wherever I post this. So I'll certainly put your link and just see if anyone actually is inspired to submit their own song choice as well. But I'm curious because it's such an involved process that for a mind like me, can't even get my head around how you even start to go about this. So what is your process to slowly kind of trying to knit all this information together?
Thank you. Well, so there's two things I want to say about that. One is I just lost my train of thought, so I'll go to the other one. I am in the middle of writing what I call writing, which is the weaving and having my voice. Because one of the things, I've read a lot of books that are just sort of lists or maybe short essays by people. And some of them leave me a little bit wanting more because I think no matter what we're reading, we want to be told a story and we want to hear the author's voice authentically telling the story. So me just putting a person's song and story one after another would maybe be interesting in some ways, but I don't think it has the feel of what I'm going for, which is I want you to know how I see the power of music in our lives. And these people, these 350 people are going to share their piece of it. And in the end, hopefully I will have told you the bigger story of the power. So I do want to talk a little bit about I did get some resistance from people. They loved the idea. They thought it was cool, but a couple of things stopped them. One you already mentioned. How can I just think of one song? And originally I did use the word important. I think in some way, tell me about an important song in your life. And I think that got people a little bit freaked out. Like, oh, important. Now I've got to think of something really important. So I shifted that away to just, and important or an interesting time or one time in your life that music had an impact on you so that it took away that need to being the top dog, if you will, the
Mm.
most important thing. So working on that, loosening up that a little bit was very helpful for people. And the other thing was the postcard bothered people because how can I tell my story on a postcard? And, I'm thinking because I want you to take it down to the essence of but you know what, Shub? I realize that's my job as a good creative writer. I need to take the 2 pages or 3 pages sometimes that people wrote, no judgment on that, but they needed to do that to get their story out. So
Mm,
my job is to condense that in a way that keeps it consistent with my book theme and also tells the essence of their story.
yeah.
No put down on people, and maybe you're finding this, but I've interviewed a lot of people in my life, and people don't talk logically or in order, if you will. They just talk. And so it's up to the interviewer or the author to take their essence and then make it a readable form.
Mm,
So so what I've done to answer your question more directly is I've taken those stories, some which did fit on a postcard and others that were 2 or 3 pages, read them all, sort of talked, themes started to emerge, right? As you can imagine, some of those themes: falling in love, having a baby, a health issue, death, those were the common themes that came up, spirituality. And so I knew that I could sort of create chapters from that. And then I would take people's stories and work on them to become so that they would become the essence of what they wanted to say, I believe. Now the chore that's before me now is to take all those stories and weave them together with my voice
yeah.
carrying the reader through. So that's the stage I'm at right now.
It's fascinating. And I'm just kind of reflecting there, we both ultimately have the kind of the same passion and the same driver and the same goal behind this, but two very different approaches. What I was reflecting on about yours is that there is one simple question, and you've allowed these people, like you said, some write a postcard, some write 4 pages, probably very different to a podcast where you're prompting and leading and things like that. I quite love the open space you've given these people to write and no pointers. So you have no real idea what's going to come out, and they are just writing from the heart, just unguided, unfiltered. And also fascinating in this technical age that we live in, with AI and so much technology around. I love the way you're doing this manually. You are just reading and feeling, and
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
idea how you store this all in your head, Jim. I think my modern day brain would never be able to hold it, but it feels like you're giving these stories the respect of really reading and feeling and
Mm,
seeing what comes up and
mm.
taking all that in before you can then let it come out and tell your own stories. It sounds like a huge job, not only in the number of stories, but a lot of stories to process on your part as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we can take it back to my origins, I've been hungry for this all my life, and
Mm,
I feel like I'm getting closer to it with this project than anything else. And if you think about it, this project is not really about me. It's about 350 other people. But what is about me and what in all my work and in just the way I've lived my life, living in community with people is very important to me. And, our world has become more isolated. And so I'm always hungry for ways to connect with people. And this is what happens with this project for me. For instance, you mentioned, how do I keep all these songs in my head? It's funny, some people that have submitted stories I see at the grocery store, I see, downtown. And as soon as I see them, my first thought is, I know what their song is. And so it's like it's allowed me a new way to connect with people, both friends that I've known for 40 years and then people I've never met before.
mm.
Uh, and how cool is that, to have this link with them through music, which, as we know, transcends, if that's the right word, transcends or expands or emphasizes what it means to be a human in the species.
I mean, I resonate with that so much, and I'm having the exact same experience. Um, Both because I am reaching out. There's a lot of people I reach out to that I would never reach out and say, "Hey, you want to chat for 5 minutes on the phone?" Because we're in completely different worlds, lives. Haven't spoken to them in 15, 20 years. But when I reach out with a project, then we actually forget about the time we haven't seen each other, the difference in our lives when we come together on this beautiful thing, which is talking about music. We not only connect, but we connect deeper than we ever would if we were just catching up and talking about our lives. And it's the transcend is a beautiful word because it transcends all these little barriers that may stop us really connecting when we just talk to people and just, we end up really connecting emotionally. And so that's beautiful. I'm kind of having the exact same experience, but an hour at a time instead of kind of en masse as you're doing it.
I admire what you're doing so much because you're taking it to a much deeper level than I'm able to do. I think it's interesting. I think our projects kind of complement each other, if you will. And the podcasts that I've listened to that you've done so far, what you're able to cultivate in people through your interviewing, it moves me as the listener.
That's beautiful to hear. Thank you. You mentioned there when you start getting into this data, there were certain themes, and you kind of touched on a few major life moments that came up. Could you share with us a little more about any other themes that you're starting to see arise through the stories that have been shared?
Yeah, sure. And let me share a little bit with you about the process for me as a writer. And maybe there's some aspiring authors out there or other people who want to write. But there is a phrase in the writing world that the book informs the author what to write. So I had this thought in my mind originally. I was going to write the book as if music was a living being, right? And so I would take that living being from the very beginning to the very end. So we're talking, if you pardon my graphic language here, but many babies are conceived with music playing, right?
Yeah.
And so I've had a few people brave enough and honest enough to share that with me, what that song was playing. It's pretty private, but so, I could start the book there with the moment we're created, there's music there. I actually had a woman who remembers being told that when she was inside her mother's belly, her mother sang in a chorus, a choir. And at 6 months, this unborn child started keeping the rhythm with her elbow or her foot to the music. I mean, yeah. And so I've gathered all these stories. So I thought I could sort of tell my bigger story through these stages of life: conception, birth, childhood, teenage, coming of age. So, but you know what? I've drifted away from that a little bit. I decided to go with whatever attracted me originally. And I don't want to give that away not only because I'm being private, but I'm not even sure if that's how the book's going to turn out. But right
Yeah.
now I'm just sort of going where the muse takes me. So it's not really chronological, but the chapters are pretty much life chapters. And I mentioned some of those: coming of age, falling in love, moving away from home for the first time, jobs. I got a tremendous number of songs about jobs, and mostly about how people hated their jobs and couldn't wait to find a better job. So it's like, think, when you're stuck in a bad job, music kind of helps you, right? You kind of get through it or inspires you. So, and the other chapter I wanted to mention that's really been pretty profound for me is I'm putting together a chapter that I'm not sure what I'm going to call, but it sort of combines the stories about spirituality, people's belief in a God or a greater higher power, and then coincidence. It seems like I don't even know how to explain it yet. This is going to be my task as a writer, how to write this, but a lot of people wrote about things that seemed coincidental, but they feel there was something bigger behind it. So I'm putting that all in one chapter and calling it, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but that's been a really interesting chapter to contemplate and think about.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I guess I personally don't believe in coincidence. I think that there is so many forces. There's destiny, there's fate, there's different forces weaving their way into our lives that nothing happens coincidentally. But interestingly, I've had quite a few conversations on this podcast about asking guests why, they think this song found them or how this song comes back to them at different times, and it's been quite fascinating. You know, there was one of my guests that listened to a very special song. The first time they listened to it, there's a very special moment with their dad, and then at the right time, this song seems to find them, and it's like a very emotional security blanket for them.
Mm,
And it's
mm.
however you want to think about it, whether it's the body remembering that experience and knowing that they need to listen to it again, or whether it's something deeper. But these songs and these bits of music are like companions to us for a lot of people, I think. And sometimes they seek them out. Sometimes the song finds them at the right time. But yeah, I don't think that's coincidence. I think there's something a lot more interesting going on
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I think for lack of a better way to express it, we use the word coincidence maybe,
Yeah.
but there's something, yeah. Probably all the songs I've received have some sort of a coincidental feel to it, right? Why did they come along at this one point in my life? Some people spoke about it more directly, that as if, wow, it happened now. But I think everybody's story in some way, you wonder why it comes to them at that time.
Yes. And I would highly encourage when I do share the link for people to submit their stories. I know when just before we hit record, I was talking to you about clicking on the link in my own story. And until that point, I was like, yeah, I know my song. I know exactly what I'd say, until it came to writing it down. And I thought, oh, okay, no, there's something I need to process here and really give it some thought.
Mm.
So I'm very excited. It feels like both a creative venture, and I feel like it's going to be a cathartic experience to really actually put some words around it, as opposed to letting it float around in my head, hoping that someone asks me. So I'm quite excited about the experience.
Can't wait to hear it and read it. So one
Yeah.
thing I can do, obviously, which I know you do on your podcast, is, I listen to the song when somebody submits it.
Mm.
I knew maybe I'd say roughly half of the songs I was already familiar with, but I still listen to them anyway. But the new songs that I didn't know, I mean, it opened up my world to so many different thoughts and feelings. But I did one of the nicest compliments I've gotten on this project is a woman who thanked me for doing it, because she said it really made her spend time. She had to sort of weave through all the songs, if you will. I don't want to make this sound like it's too complicated for people, but for her, she had to push aside all the songs that were okay or important or pivotal in some way, but to find one that really resonated with her. And it was hard work, but it was meaningful work. And
Yeah,
that was a bonus I didn't expect when I started this project.
that's beautiful. And I think from experience, it's not always the song you expect it to be or
Mm,
want it to be. When you
mm.
really give it some thought, there's a song that emerges that you kind of think, really, that one? Nothing cooler? And you're like, nope,
Yeah,
that is the
yeah.
one.
I've had a couple people sort of embarrassed, like, I can't believe I'm sharing this song with you, but no, it's like, no need to be embarrassed. You never know why, or, it's far be it from me to judge. I mean, tell me your story, and so that I can appreciate that. The other
Yeah,
thing I
yeah.
wanted to mention, Shub, is if people are thinking of submitting, please don't stress over grammar or even how your story is structured. Don't worry about that. It's kind of like how you present your podcast, which is very inviting, is just talk from your heart. And so I'm asking people to write it down. I'll take care of, cleaning it up if it needs to be cleaned up, or that sort of thing, to not stress about the sort of like being in school English teacher kind of,
Yes,
don't worry about that stuff.
fantastic. I'm going to ask a question, and I'm not sure it's the right question, so please tell me if it's not appropriate. But what do you hope people take from the book?
Mm,
I guess the
mm.
reason why I'm not sure it's the right question is because I'm not sure if you are going into it with the mindset of, I hope people get this, or whether you are just in the creative process.
Well, so again, I'll say that, the book tells the author what to write. So, but I do, of course, I have personal goals. I want I want people to appreciate music in a sense the way I've appreciated it, and it sounds like you've appreciated it. And and certainly I know there are many, many, many people who do already appreciate music, but I'd like them to sort of consider it as sort of our link as humans. You know, if you can read a story from a person you've never met before and be moved by that, that's pretty amazing. And makes you want to listen to that song and sort of get a sense of what that person was going through. You know, I think we could use more of that in this world where we appreciate one another and empathize for one another, understand one another. So that would be like sort of the basic rock
Mm,
goal for me. There may
what
be
a
other
great
things that
goal.
come from it.
Yeah, what a great goal. And I think it's, it's interesting that whilst every story and song might be so unique, um, what you described there, I'm sure there is just a huge connection running through all of them because we're not that different. We are not that different.
Yeah.
And as a force to connect people, I can't wait to read this book. I imagine reading it and feeling a sort of a comfort that all these different stories, but we are all, there's something that connects us all, which is this kind of deep appreciation of this beautiful gift that we have, which
One of the challenges of this book is how do you write what you feel, right? You listen to that song and these feelings going through you, and we all have them for our favorite songs or our important songs. So, but how do you put that in print? So, I know I'm going to have ways to link people up to the songs so they can, readily listen to them, that piece. But my job as a writer and my goal as an author is to get to that feeling point with just words. It may not be possible. I'll tell you in about a year if it's possible, but I'm going to give it a try.
fantastic. Well, yeah, I mean, you said a year. I'm impressed that it's going to be a year because this sounds like you've got a lot to do, Jim. But I'm super excited to read it. And of course, when it is released, we will share the links so our listeners can take a look. Um, in the meantime, aside from the link that I will share for people to submit their stories, are there any other places where people can find your work or connect with you at the moment?
Yeah, well, I have a website. So the website that you spoke of is really my website for all my books. So that's probably the quickest way to learn about my other writing. And my blogs are on there. I've written about music a lot. So if you want to get a taste for how I've, talked about individual songs, you can link to my blog. So it's really just my name, which somehow I'm sure you'll have up the spelling of my name, and it's Jim Farfaglia, www.jimfarfaglia.com. That takes you to my website, and I have a Facebook page too. So again, just my name if you want to do that. My books sell on Amazon. Those those are the kind of ways to connect with me.
Yeah, fantastic. Jim, it's been a pleasure. I kind of thought we needed to get this episode out the way before we bring in your song so we can actually give the full respect that we need to your song and your story. But it's been fascinating to learn more about the book, and thank you very much for your time and being so open. And I can't wait to meet you again to find out which song you're bringing in.
Yes. Hey, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for doing that Google search and finding me.
Not a coincidence, Jim.
No, that's right.
All right. Thank you
Absolutely.
very
Yeah.
much, sir. And you take care of yourself.
You too, Shub. Thank you.
It's our time. It's our time. It's our time.